Good afternoon. My name is Ben Glassman. I am the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio, and I'm joined here at the podium this afternoon by Joe Deters, the Acting Special Agent in charge of the FBI Cincinnati Division. We are here to announce federal criminal charges against Steve Rauch, Joyce Cameron, and James Cameron. Specifically, a federal indictment, unsealed today, charges each of them with 1 count of conspiracy to commit mail fraud and 6 counts of substantive mail fraud. Before describing the factual allegations of the indictment, I want to give the same disclaimer that I always give, which is that an indictment is just allegations. It's not evidence. It's just putting the defendants on notice of what the charges are. All defendants, including these 3 defendants, are presumed innocent unless and until the United States proves them guilty beyond reasonable doubt with evidence in court. With that disclaimer, the gist of the allegations in the indictment unsealed today are that Mr. Rauch owned and operated several different demolition, trucking, and landfill companies. Among other things, these companies sought and obtained demolition contracts between 2012 and 2014, including from the city of Dayton. These contracts included ones that specified that a certain portion of the work on the project would be performed by a business qualified under a number of different programs in order to promote the inclusion of socially or economically disadvantaged groups, whether minority business, woman-owned business, small business enterprise, disadvantaged business, and the like. But although Rauch and his company said he would subcontract a certain portion of the work to disadvantaged businesses as per the contract, in fact, he did not. His company did all the work. And instead, he used Joyce Cameron, the owner of a company called Green Star Trucking, as his straw or his front. Together with her husband, James, Joyce and Green Star signed paperwork giving the appearance that a disadvantaged business was performing work per the contract. For this, Rauch paid them a fee, which was either a few $1,000s or forgiving a debt that they owed him. Each of these charges is punishable by 0 to 20 years in prison. I can tell you that Rauch made his initial appearance in federal court earlier this afternoon and has been released on his own recognizance. These charges represent the second step in an FBI-led long-running investigation called Operation Demolished Integrity. The point of this investigation is to identify, investigate, and root out fraud and corruption in the greater Dayton area. The first step was announced at the very end of April. And although we are now announcing these additional charges today, the investigation remains open and ongoing. And we do welcome tips and information from the public regarding any aspect of fraud or corruption occurring in the greater Dayton area. I'd like to thank and commend the FBI, the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the Ohio Auditor of State's Office, and AUSA's Brent Talachi, Samit Harden, and Dominic Gerace, who are prosecuting the case. I'm going to yield the podium now to Acting Special Agent in Charge, Deters. After he offers a few remarks, I will return and attempt to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Glassman. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Deters. I'm the Acting Special Agent in charge of the FBI Cincinnati Division. Many of you were here 6 months ago when the first round of indictments against 4 Dayton area individuals were announced. At the time, we revealed the investigation was ongoing and we anticipated additional charges. As Mr. Glassman stated, today additional indictments have been unsealed and made public. At the previous press conference, I had stated that this has been a lengthy investigation using a variety of sophisticated investigative methods to uncover what appears to be a culture of corruption in Dayton area politics. I stand by those comments. Having a significant number of business people and government officials in one city alleged to be engaged in corruption and criminally charged should serve as a warning sign of a larger problem. That problem should not be brushed aside or ignored, but addressed by the community, its leaders, and when necessary, law enforcement. The FBI vigorously investigates public corruption. The U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes these important cases. We will continue to work together to root out corruption in Dayton and beyond. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Will there be more indictments after this?
So the investigation is ongoing. That's, I think, what I'd like to say. Rather than promising specific indictments at any particular time, I would like to say that we are still working on this investigation and do welcome the public's assistance.
When did the Camerons appear in court?
The Camerons have not yet appeared in court. We are in communication with their attorneys regarding that matter.
Is Green Star Trucking a real, was it a real company? Was it actually doing a lot of real work, or was?
According to the allegations of the indictment, it was a real company in as much as the company existed on paper, at least insofar as the allegations in this case are concerned. The company did not do any work on the projects at issue here. So although they were certified to be doing a portion of the disadvantaged business portion of the contracts at issue, in fact, they didn't do anything other than perhaps have James Cameron be physically present at the direction of Rauch or one of his subordinates in order, at the work site in order to give the appearance of doing work.
Did they, this trucking company, Green Star, did they own any trucks? How can you have a trucking company with no trucks?
These are all good questions, but I'm going to confine myself factually to the allegations of the indictment.
Attorney, is the city of Dayton connected to these indictments in any way? These contracts were awarded. Is there any evidence of wrongdoing by the city of Dayton in this round of indictments?
These indictments right now are just against Steve Rauch, Joyce Cameron, and James Cameron, and so the allegations of the indictment include that there were city of Dayton contracts that were awarded to Rauch, but insofar as the allegations here are, the allegation is that the governments lost money by giving those contracts to Rauch.
But you would say that, is it fair to say that the city of Dayton awarded those contracts in good faith?
So I don't really have any particular comment on whether they were awarded in good faith or any other faith. I would just say that there is no allegation with respect to the awarding of the contracts in this indictment. We're strictly talking about the people who sought and obtained the contracts.
Why mail fraud and why not, what other types of fraud or conspiracy or corruption charges? Why mail fraud?
So it's a scheme to obtain money or property that was under the control of somebody else, in this case contracts that were very valuable, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that were actually paid out. And then the mails were used to execute that scheme. So that is the classic situation for mail fraud.
What's the severity if Mr. Rauch and his accomplices are found guilty? What's the most, I think you said 0 to 20 years?
That's
that
correct.
On each count or just?
That's correct. There are 7 counts. As to each count, the potential punishment is 0 to 20 years in prison.
How much losses?
There's an allegation in the conspiracy count that there are hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses, but beyond, again, I don't want to go beyond the allegations of the indictment.
Were some of these actions by Joyce Cameron done when she was mayor?
I don't have in front of me at this time the dates on which Ms. Cameron was mayor of Trotwood. The allegations here have to do with her role vis-a-vis Green Star and Steve Rauch, not vis-a-vis her public employment.
What was the time frame of impropriety and illegality?
It's the conspiracy is alleged to have taken place between 2012 and 2014.
Is there any question about whether or not Green Star Trucking is truly the disadvantaged businesses, women business enterprise that it is certified as?
The company existed and sought and obtained all of those certifications, and the gist of the illegality as alleged in the indictment is not in obtaining those certifications, but rather in falsely certifying that in fact it was performing part of the work on contracts that called for a portion of the disadvantaged businesses.
Will you talk about how many cities are involved? I mean, I heard City of Dayton, Trotwood. Are there any other cities involved as well?
The indictment references government entities, and those are specified to include the city of Dayton. I don't want to restrict the proof at trial by saying that it's only the city of Dayton, but the city of Dayton is the one that is mentioned and identified specifically in the indictment.
Did you say Trotwood is in it too?
No, I think that that was in reference to an earlier question about
Oh, okay.
Ms. Cameron's background.
So Dayton's the only one mentioned in the indictment?
That's correct. Yes.
The last time you indicted, you mentioned citywide development, you talked about other agencies. Some point here, somebody actually awards these contracts, and there is clear indication that there's been pay to play going on in the city of Dayton that, for instance, on issue 9, everybody who donated to this campaign was either a vendor to the city, an employee of a city, the unions, or major powers in town. I'm just wondering why we're still looking at these basically small contract violations instead of getting to the meat of what's really going on in this culture of corruption. Obviously, there was more to it than just a $50,000 patio. And, you know, I mean, I've had the same thing. The MBE, I'm certified as a service disabled veteran-owned business. I got dinged by the school board saying I wasn't a minority contract. I don't know where these people come from.
So
I mean, we're not getting to the meat of it here.
let me answer that question by repeating something that I and Acting Special Agent in Charge Deters said. Today is the second step of Operation Demolition Integrity, a long-running FBI investigation that is intended to identify, investigate, and root out fraud and corruption in the greater Dayton area. The investigation is ongoing, and if the members of the public have information with respect to the sorts of activities that we were talking about today or that we talked about in the first round of announcements, federal authorities welcome that information, and we will provide a tip line in the release.
Is Green Star Trucking, like, did they have the capacity to do some of the work they're hired for, or no?
I think that probably goes to proof at trial, evidence at trial. So let me not talk about additional evidence that's not in the indictment.
So the contracts that Green Star is a subcontractor for like Rauch, did they get the full amount that they were supposed to get from the contractor, or do they just get paid like a fee for, you know, help take part in it?
The latter. The allegation of the indictment is in the conspiracy count is that they were simply paid a fee, often a few $1,000s, or forgiving previously owed debts.
Do you know how much that was? What kind of money are we talking total?
The indictment alleges a fee of a few $1,000s.
And then the debts?
Is not specified.
What tip or what type of information put you over the top? If the window was 2012 to 2014 that the illegality happened, we're 5 years later, can you talk about that 5-year period here where either you didn't know or we're still trying to flesh it out?
Yeah, so this is it's a long-running investigation, and any time you're dealing with any kind of investigation into historical actions, and especially if you're dealing with an investigation that is complicated, like this one is, that has many different actors, different schemes that are in some ways similar, some ways distinct, that takes a long time. And so we have to try to be mindful of how we can advance the investigation, make sure that all of those who have committed offenses are held accountable for their conduct, but also do so in a way that doesn't jeopardize the ongoing investigations. So this particular conduct was is alleged to have taken place from 2012 to 2014. The investigation has been going on for some time, and it's generally it is the case that we don't let things go. So if in the course of the investigation evidence is developed that indicates that a particular crime has been committed and it's within the statute of limitations, the United States Attorney's Office is going to pursue those charges. Sometimes the particular timing of when we are bringing forward charges is due to a whole host of factors in a complicated investigation, but it certainly includes not jeopardizing ongoing aspects of the investigation.
Out of respect for the DOJ and the 3 stars that you represent, aren't there checks and balances that's supposed to stop it before it gets to your level? And if so, can you advise what happened?
Certainly I'm sure that there are lots of different checks and balances that are supposed to be in place in order to make sure that this kind of fraud does not take place. And as alleged in the indictment, there were some steps taken affirmatively by these conspirators in order to perpetrate the fraud and evade those checks and balances. Ultimately, I can't speak to the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of particular programs that are designed to catch fraud before it takes place, but what I can say is that fraud is a crime, and the essence of fraud is to trick people and get money that doesn't belong to you and evade those things that are designed to make sure that everything's on the up and up. It's our job in law enforcement to investigate it whenever there is a credible allegation of fraud, and if we think we can prove it, to bring those charges.
Yeah. Joe, I have a question for you. What message does this send to other governmental entities who are contracting literally, if not daily, but weekly? And they're up against the same thing. They have MBEs come to them all the time and saying, we qualify for this, we qualify for that. And they're going to have subs as well. But if they can just get a rubber stamp or a friend who does have a qualification, and then just pay them $1,000 and say thanks for your business, they can all get away with it.
Sure, and I think that's what the message is here today is you can't get away with it. For people to, for agencies or companies to apply for government contracts under a specific status, they have to actually be, they have to belong to that status, and they have to comply with the rules and regulations that have to do that. That's precisely, I think, what the important message is today, that you can't game the system. This was clearly an intentional attempt to game the system and end up with a contract that you shouldn't have.
Was there any evidence that somebody at City Hall knew this was happening and at arm's length?
So
Just
we're
didn't look too closely.
Yeah, no, we're not going to address those kinds of questions because they're outside the scope of the charges today.
Was it one more question?
With 1 week from today, we've got an election here in the city of Dayton and across the state, and some of the positions that are up for election are council positions. Is there any reason to think that voters should question either integrity or trust or just raise an eyebrow when they're in the voting booths in a week?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to confine myself to talking about the charges that are at issue here today and not address those kinds of broader questions, which certainly are up to every citizen to figure out for themselves.
What is the relationship between this case and the 4 other indictments?
This case and the 4 other indictments all grew out of the same FBI operation, Demolished Integrity, which is an ongoing investigation.
Are there any other connections of the same people involved? We have Corporation A, Individual B, and all of that in the other indictments. Any of the same people involved?
No.
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 Did this come through the tip line, or was it the allegations uncovered during his investigation?
I need to adhere to Jennifer's thing about one more question. This is the last one. So I will say that this is a long-running investigation that has used a variety of different means for historical investigation, but we have, so this investigation has been going on for quite a while, but we have received information from the public, and that information is always useful to authorities in finding new leads, corroborating information, and we continue to welcome the public's input. Thank you.